Hey guys, it's Olivie Blake, and this is me not writing. Thanks for giving me last week off. I needed it. I actually was doing sort of okay, and then I woke up in the middle of the night. Well, I woke up at 1:30, and then I sat there, and it was like 2, 3, and then it got to be 4, and I was like, uh-oh, bounced back too far. But anyway, I am feeling better. I'm feeling moderately normal. So yeah, I also won't be here next week, or I'll be here. I'll literally be here, but I won't be able to film anything because my family is coming to my 1-bedroom apartment for Thanksgiving. I have been doing a thing where I have practiced every year for Thanksgiving dinner, just on like the off chance that I would have to make a full Thanksgiving dinner. And every year Mr. Blake is like, why do you do this? It's just the two of us. And I'm like, I mean, the reason it's just the two of us is because, like, it's really hard to get to Northern California from Southern California. It's hard to travel anywhere in the U.S. during Thanksgiving. I think because during the Christmas holidays, people have, like, different trips, or they're not all going for Christmas. But for Thanksgiving, everybody's traveling, and it's a disaster, and going to Iowa is worse. Don't tell anyone I said that. So, anyway, we mostly stay home. But every year I practice. So I don't usually make a turkey. I've only made a turkey one time, and it was a few years ago because I don't actually love turkey. But it's seasonally appropriate, so I feel like I have to make it when both sides of my family are going to be here, his parents and mine. So I'm making a turkey. Cornbread stuffing with sausage, Brussels sprouts and pancetta, which is my personal specialty. My mom specifically requested it. Mashed potatoes, usually I double bake them, so I make the mashed potatoes and then I bake them with Gruyere on top and caramelized onions. Roasted broccoli and cauliflower, that's very easy. I toss them in olive oil and put them in the oven for 20 minutes. And then bourbon bread pudding. I made it for like a Friendsgiving one time, and everybody referred to me as the girl with the bread pudding, so yeah, it's not my recipe. I don't bake, really. I bake like strictly to, when I cook, it's a free-for-all, it's madness. Baking, you can't do that. There has to be like science in baking. So I will add that link in here. Okay, I have a glass of water because I very badly need it. I'm not hydrating well. Something's wrong with our filter. It's sour. I don't know. A couple of personal things. I am currently reading Sweet Bitter, which I had heard of, and I wasn't sure why I had heard of it. I think I knew it was about a 20-something girl working in a restaurant in New York City, but I didn't realize it was going to be so literary. I mean, this book is literary in like the truest sense. It's not really about anything so far, but it's gorgeous. The descriptions of food are like wild. And it actually reminds me a little bit of my first book, which was when I had left law school and I was kind of describing the ins and outs of working in a government office, which is what I did before law school. And it's that feeling where, like, you know, this person is intimately familiar with the process of, in this case, waitressing. She's a back server. Right now, I'm 130 pages in. Anyway, it's really good. I recommend it. I'm not going to talk about this yet, but I will do the post next week for The Left Hand of Darkness, which is this month's spell read. Coincidentally, I am reading The Tao of Physics. These are my annotations. Mr. Blake picked this out, and then I was like, oh, I need that for the book that I'm writing. But the interesting part about me reading this at the same time as I was reading The Left Hand of Darkness is that this alien society that Ursula Le Guin is writing about feels like an East Asian society to me. The concepts of unity with opposing, I don't want to give anything away if you're reading, but the thing that the left hand of darkness comes from, light is the left hand of darkness, that idea feels very like the yin-yang concept, plus this idea of the manners are very particular. When I was reading, I read this book first, and as I was reading, I had the image of an Asian society in my head and didn't really know why, and then I read this and I was like, oh, okay. So if you're reading this book and you want to talk about that, it'll come up in our conversation next week when I do the post, so I'll express my thoughts more clearly then. Okay, getting into questions. Sorry, I'm talking fast. I don't have a lot of time. I have to go to therapy, which is probably best. There's an episode of the new anthology series Modern Love that's on Amazon Prime, yes, that focused on a woman who has bipolar, played by Anne Hathaway. If you haven't heard of it, I liked Modern Love. I didn't love it. I was expecting to love it. I loved the first episode, and I want to say, the 7th episode, and everything else was kind of meh. Okay, so yes, it's based on a true story on letters that are written to the New York Times Modern Love column. Wondering, when have I seen it? Yes, to my thoughts. And if it's at all reminiscent of my experiences, this person has a friend who's bipolar, and she said it was the most true-to-life example she's ever seen fictionalized, and it was difficult for her to get through because of it. So I thought about this a lot, because when you first sent it, when the episode ended, my immediate feedback was I hated that. And I couldn't quite figure out why. I mean, I knew she was bipolar long before she said she was bipolar. She was showing all the signs of it, and I think that I do agree with your friend then that it's true to life in that essentially everything that happened to her it was recognizable, it looked familiar, and it was well acted. So normally it's easy for me to watch a fictional story and not take like a I don't usually judge characters, is what I'm trying to say, but I found myself feeling very strongly against this particular character, and the more I think about it, the more I think it's because the portrayal of bipolar, the illness, was fairly accurate. I mean, granted, I do not think she would have cycled through those moods so quickly, but of course, it's part of a story, and who knows what was going on in that actual person's life, but it needed to be told in 30 minutes, so I get that. There's some allowances there, and my initial kind of backlash was like, it's not quite right, but I don't think that's what it was. I think that her story was just so similar to mine. I mean, she was obviously a lawyer. She had obviously gotten through law school kind of with this knowing that something was wrong with her and not wanting to cope with it. I was a little bit frustrated by her. I was frustrated with her because she was like the worst version of my story, if that makes sense. It was definitely a very personal, I don't want to watch this because I want her to be stronger than this. I want her to pick herself up, and she's not doing it. And it was definitely this, it was deeply, deeply personal, because it was almost like, okay, watching myself being unable to pick myself up, which I would have found unacceptable. And obviously we know what happened to me, because I did treat my bipolar when I was in law school. And I don't know, I probably would have gotten through law school just fine the way she did. So it was kind of weird, like seeing a alternate version of my life almost. And the other thing about bipolar is that it does get worse the longer you don't treat it. So yeah, I think I was frustrated with her as a character through no real fault of the narrative. I think the thing that they really got right, or that specifically Anne Hathaway got right, was when, well, let me say one thing they got wrong is that usually there is an identifiable trigger. Essentially, something happens to you, it triggers a chemical reaction in your brain. This happens to everyone, right? But with bipolar, when something gets triggered by an event happening, any event, sometimes small, sometimes big, sometimes it's just an emotion or a memory, it could be internal or external, intrinsic or not. But when something happens, something flips a switch, and a normal person's brain would say, you should be happy about this, you should be sad about this. Whereas a bipolar person's brain will feed me or her an emotion that isn't necessarily applicable to what's happening. So one of my big fears, because I read this book about having bipolar and coping with it, was sometimes when something really good happens, and this is true for me, when something really good happens, sometimes I do fall into a depression because it triggers a reaction. It's just triggering incorrectly. Something like the catch is off. So one of the things I was so terrified of is someone was talking about how they married the love of their life and then fell into this like 3-month depression. This is the thing that was so tough about her, the way she was dealing with her bipolar. For her, it was only lasting a few days, so her not treating it wasn't a big deal, but it can last much longer than that, which again, it was a 30-minute show, whatever. So yeah, so the thing that I felt they got really right was Anne Hathaway's face right at the moment when she feels it coming back. So she's happy, she's just cooked dinner, she's excited for her date to get there, and then she looks in the mirror, and you can see that something inside her head goes wrong. You can see the trigger catch failing. And the happiness washes away from her face, and she goes, oh, no, 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 no. And that moment was, oh my God, I'm like, that moment was so real. Scary real. Because it does happen like that. It happens out of nowhere, and all of a sudden you don't know what happened to your real thoughts or your real emotions, and there's just this cloud of something. It's easier to feel the depression coming than it is to feel the mania just kind of sneaks up on you. I don't usually know what's happening until after I've stopped sleeping, or when Mr. Blake has said, like, are you okay? You're talking really fast. Or I've started spending money, and he's like, did you just buy a bunch of things in a row? Like, that's out of character. I never see the mania coming, but I'm always the first person to know the depression is coming, which just feels unfair. Because really the mania is the fun part. That's the other thing that they made really clear is her Rita Hayworth day that's the fun part. It's the destructive part. But it's when everybody loves you, or you think everybody loves you. I guess in conclusion, it was very true to life. And I hated it. Okay, so this next thing. Hello! I just read this BuzzFeed article called The Smartest Women I Know Are All Dissociating by Emmeline Klein on BuzzFeed and immediately thought of you. It's on dissociative feminism, and I don't know, do you have any thoughts? Yes, I do. This article will be linked in the info below. So initially when I read this, I was like, okay, there's some good points here. Primarily, it was focused on how Carrie Bradshaw and Hannah Horvath of Girls. So Carrie Bradshaw of Sex and the City, Hannah Horvath of Girls, and this type of woman who's kind of a mess, contrasting with Phoebe Waller-Bridge's Fleabag, who is a mess, but instead of complaining about her mess or asking for help with her mess, she just dissociates from her mess. She kind of steps back, she addresses the camera, she addresses the audience. And this article is kind of making the argument that this is what a lot of women are doing now, is just they get so fed up with what's expected of them. I think you might want to read the article rather than have me explain it to you, but it's kind of this idea that the smartest women that this woman knows are checking out, basically. And she specifically describes that they're checking out during sex, which is interesting because she specified that it's heterosexual women seem to have this epidemic of like having sex and feeling nothing, which I obviously have a lot of problems with for many reasons that I've stated that you've heard me say before. Right up front, I want to say it's not the smartest women who are dissociating, it's the most privileged women, and how dare they? I'll come back to this, but that's my overall take is this author says it's the smartest women who are dissociating. She is wrong. It is the educated women who have enough privilege that they can dissociate, that they don't have to get angry. Because why do they have to get angry? I would bet a lot of money these are mostly white women, so they don't have to worry about women of color. They don't have to worry about trans women. I'm going to rein it in and come back to what I was saying. So one thing the author did touch on was giving up on progress is perhaps the epitome of white feminism, so self-awareness at least, that promotes a nihilism that is somewhere between unproductive and genuinely dangerous. And then she goes on to talk about being post-wounded and about how women are essentially giving up the ability to feel. Like they're so hurt by their position in the system that it's easier to just feel nothing. I was saying really recently that this is why I write. I want you to feel. I want us to feel. I want us to feel everything. It's just amazing what women are willing to do besides get angry. I think that's kind of the idea here, is that women are so angry that they're dissociating from their anger because they don't see it being productive. But do you see how this is cyclical? That if we don't get angry because it's not productive, then certainly the people who are angry, who deserve to be angry, which should be all of us, can't produce anything because we are the ones that are easily sidelined. It's stigmatized to have rage. To be furious about what's happening is proactive. I mean, well, it's not inherently proactive. We have to do something about our anger. But feeling nothing is so inactive to be criminal. There are so many people who need people who have voices, people who are articulate, people like this author who clearly wrote an article that spoke to a lot of women. She was talking about tweets and stuff on social media that women relate to, but this is not the type of womanhood that I think we should relate to. And I think she agreed with that. I'm not sure that she really came around to making her point. It seemed self-aware, but not self-aware enough. It kind of glamorized this concept. But I think that it was I think it is a dire misinterpretation of Fleabag. So I don't know if you've seen Fleabag. Someone recently asked me about it. I loved it. When they asked me, what did you think of Fleabag? I was like, I love it. Mr. Blake loved it. It's so clever and it's emotional, and I never had a reason to talk about it before. But so this author, the author of this article, says that Fleabag is dissociating, and she's making that look like the cool way to handle it. But even Phoebe Waller-Bridge herself is subverting that. She dissociates at climactic moments. She steps back when she could be angry, or when she could be insulted, or when she could be in pain, and instead she looks at the camera. She doesn't address her feelings. But then, in season 2, the hot priest comes along. I'm not going to give away very much, but basically, he is constantly forcing her to address her dissociation. Every time that she looks at the camera, he literally says, "Where did you go? You just left. Part of you is missing." So really, season 2 just subverts the idea that this is what's cool. Because yeah, maybe this is what's cool, but it's not meaningful. There is no meaning in it, which is why the person who represents her love story, and who definitely is a love story, no matter how you slice it, it's a love story with someone, it's a story about love, he forces her to feel something, and that really just greatly improves her for the better until eventually she can walk away from this process of dissociation and really be herself. That's what I took from it. I am obviously an author. I specialize in fiction, so I don't know if this author just didn't get that from the narrative or hasn't even seen season 2, but I just wanted to make that point. But I also wanted to add, she does say 2 things, well, a number of things, but for example, smart women are supposed to say certain things. She calls something a performative assortment of fried and fattening things I eat in front of boys to make them think my body is an accident. So she's making the point that this dissociation is performative. We're doing this because it is more acceptable than being angry. The dissociation is being reinforced, that this is the cool thing to do because other women are retweeting these things or reblogging these things. The idea of dissociative feminism is appealing and dystopian in a way that easily circulates the internet. But who are we performing for? That's my question. Because we're making this seem like this is a performance for other women, right? Like that we want other women to approve of this behavior, to retweet and like these sorts of things. This is what is getting around. But I don't think so. She specifically mentions that Hannah from Girls and Carrie Bradshaw from Sex and the City were hated. But you know who they were hated by? Not women, men. Men do not want us to be angry. The dissociation is performative, not for us, for them. I'm sorry, I'm getting all worked up. I just honestly wanted to say that don't fucking dissociate with your emotions, with your feelings, with your anger, with any of it. I'm not in a position to tell you what to do, but as a person who regularly uses my voice, because occasionally someone might hear it, don't do that. I get why this article exists. I think it's a timely observation, but I think it is irresponsible to leave it there, to not draw a conclusion of this is unacceptable. We cannot go on like this. We can't pull back. Doesn't make sense. To call it a nihilism, somewhere between unproductive and genuinely dangerous, I'm going to call it dangerous. I'm going to call this a dangerous form of feminism, to say that stuff is so bad for us that we are just going to not feel it is only, it's only going to make the people who do feel it, who do feel the consequences of being other, of being alienated by politics and social structures, those people are going to suffer if you don't use your voice, if you don't feel your rage, if you don't offer solutions as someone who is directly impacted by the way that this country or this society or this world treats women. I understand why this would be happening to educated, privileged women, because they worked hard and they did what they needed to do. They did what was expected of them. They diet, they eat well, they went to the good schools. I get it. Just anecdotally, I never understood, I don't understand the soulmate trope. I think that's why I wrote Divination for Skeptics, to essentially subvert it. And the thing is, I would say that all of my stories have a soulmate aspect to them. Paradox, definitely. Clean and marked, absolutely. But I never understood why the soulmate trope, like the soul scars thing, was so popular. And I think I get now this feeling of wanting someone else to figure it out for us, wanting someone else to take ownership. We're waiting for something to happen to us. And I think that's what's happening with the dissociating. We are waiting for something to get fixed. We're waiting for someone to tell us who our soulmate is. We're waiting for someone to rescue us. Still, we're waiting for someone to rescue us. And it's just unacceptable. No one is going to save us. No one is going to save us. Pete Buttigieg is not going to save us. That's a whole other. We can't bank on promise. We can't bank on hope. But it is not acceptable to say that it's okay to take a step back, to feel less, to be post-wounded is not something we can be. We are wounded. We are hurting. We as a gender are bleeding out. And do you want us to just look at that and watch it happen and do nothing? Absolutely not. I'm not saying that there are women who feel this way who are not acting on it. I am saying it's not the smartest women. The smartest women you know, I hope that the smartest women you know are busy using their voice, that they're busy educating people, that they're busy interacting with people and trying to do something about this world that they live in. And that doesn't always mean direct things like running for office or anything like that. We need women to succeed everywhere, in all industries, in all areas of life. We need to support the women who are doing anything, everything. We just need to support women. And I know I'm just like a broken record on that. And I don't know that you necessarily expected me to give this massive lecture about it, but I think I just, I posted on Tumblr. I need more water. God, I need so much water now. I posted on Tumblr. I need to post some excerpts from my book, which is not finished, but it has some pretty, isolated excerpts. My book, Stargazing is Necrophilia, which I have read excerpts from before, which is really just about the female experience. And it kind of is like this, where the main character is highly educated. She, like me, is biracial. That's my experience, so it's going to happen. But essentially, the idea that she wants to dissociate, she wants to feel nothing, but there are none of us who are truly feeling nothing. We are kind of aiming for that, I think. I think we all kind of are like facing down the barrel of our the destruction of our psyche and trying to back away, either back away or destroy it completely. And that's kind of where she is. She's emotionally self-destructive, and that's what Fleabag tries to avoid, is she steps back so as to not destroy herself emotionally, even though she absolutely does. So yeah, as I was reading this, and I was thinking, God, I have a lot of takes on this, but I wrote them into fiction. And at this point, I don't foresee myself querying this anytime soon. It's kind of a back burner project because I know that publishers aren't really looking for it. So it has become very important to me to make it available for people who are reading things like this article and thinking, some of this resonates with me, but I want to feel something. I don't want to take a step back. I just want to feel like these feelings are being felt by other people. So I'm going to post those. I haven't done it at the time I'm filming this, but I will have done it by the time this is posted. So those links, or link, will be in the info below. Okay, well, I ended up going on for a long time. I have another question that is just about how to plan a novel. I'll talk about planning your novel in the next chapter. In the next video, which will not be next week, but the week after that. So if you have any more questions about that, someone did ask me, just as an aspiring writer, how do you just get started? So we can kind of address that in the same episode, just planning in general. I think I have a little bit stronger takes on that now. I used to just not plan. I think, to make a long story short, what most people mean when they say, how do you plan a novel? What they mean is, how do you plan a first draft? And the first draft is kind of whatever. You just write things down in the first draft. A novel is many drafts. So that's just something to keep in mind, that your first draft is almost never going to be the book. The book consists of 3, 4, 5 drafts. For me, every book probably goes through at least one major plot overhaul, where I just change something big from the first to the second draft. So anyway, I said I wasn't going to talk about it, and here I am talking about it. This water's so sour. I don't know what's going on. We'll be back to talk about planning novels. Until then, if you're in the US, happy Thanksgiving. Happy almost December. I played the Nutcracker soundtrack for my dog while he took a bath, and it seemed to really soothe him. So, yeah. Anyway, this has been me, Olivie Blake, not writing. And I'll see you in 2 weeks.